It's time for FLA Law, brought to you by the personal injury attorneys of Perenich, Caulfield, Avril, and Noyes. This hour will be informative, along with taking your questions and comments. Now, here are your hosts for today's show.
Good evening. This is Attorney Matthew Noyes, and I'm one of the attorneys at Perenich, Caulfield, Avril, and Noyes, the oldest personal injury law firm in Tampa Bay, serving those that are hurt, those that are injured since 1955. I am not here alone, fortunately. Lori Robinson is here as well. You've heard Lori on previous episodes, and Lori has been an attorney with us for decades.
Yes, I guess.
And so both Lori Robinson and myself are here to answer any questions that you have regarding personal injury, car accidents, car insurance, slip and falls, work injuries, and even Social Security disability, which is kind of going to be the focus for this hour. But we are a live call-in show, and we encourage you to call in. Otherwise, you hear two attorneys talking forever. But the number is 727-441-3000, and we're happy to take your call on the air. We are also on our firm's YouTube channel, but we are also live on the firm's Facebook page. And that firm's Facebook page is Perenich, Caulfield, Avril, and Noyes Injury Lawyers. So we are live now, so you can see us. And you can also send us questions through the comments. I'm looking right here on the computer, and I can answer those questions that you have as well if you don't want to hear your voice on the radio. But without further ado, Lori, can you reintroduce yourself to the listeners and
Sure.
Tell them a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm always glad to sit in here. So as you said, I've been with the law firm for, quote, decades. Actually, I'm coming up on the 25th anniversary in
That's
October.
wonderful.
I can't even believe that. It's we do have a great time, though, and I feel very fortunate to be working with a law firm that is so dedicated to helping people. I mean, that's basically been sort of my life's calling. So I love trial practice. You and I work together on our team together,
Right.
and of course handles cases involving anything, pretty much anything in the personal injury field, which is going to include Social Security, workers' comp, obviously automobile accidents, medical malpractice, slip and fall, you name it. If the person's injured, we're happy to take a look at it and see what we can do to get
Right.
compensation for as a result of injuries, that obviously that arise out of some negligence.
Right, because they're fighting the insurance companies, and insurance companies have lawyers looking out for their own best interest.
Yes.
So it's just evening the playing field.
That's exactly right. And, it is, I'd say being a lawyer for many, many moons that it's, and I love it, but it is kind of tough that you sort of really need so much legal advice these days, but honestly, you do.
That's true.
It's just the intricacies of insurance law, what you would be entitled to or not entitled to. I had a friend not too long ago who called me. She'd been in an automobile accident. She had $100,000 liability coverage, which in this day and age isn't really all that much,
Right.
and she was at fault in that accident, but the insurance company hired lawyers for her, but she talked to me because she wasn't really exactly comfortable understanding, what her situation was. So, and it was just, she was a fish out of water. And
Right.
That's the situation, I think, for most people. In fact, probably would be for you and I if we didn't do this type of law.
Right.
Which,
I agree.
So fortunately, Guy Perenich in 1955 decided he wanted to specialize in personal injury. And as a result, it's kind of the legacy of our firm that we're able to offer our expertise.
Right. He was an insurance adjuster before he became an attorney. And then he said, okay, I saw what the insurance companies wanted me to do. And so I'm going to fight the other side.
Yes.
And so he started the process. Bob Carroll continued it. And then many decades later, over almost 70 now, we have been there to help serve, not you, Lori.
No, I know. I'm nowhere
but the firm.
near that.
But we've been here to help throughout Tampa Bay.
Yes.
But Lori, you also have a title of board certified civil trial attorney.
Yes. One of the things, as my personal ideal as a young person when I was going to be a lawyer was to be involved with trials. And most people are comforted to know that if you have a claim, the odds are relatively small that you would end up having, and you certainly don't go to trial if you don't choose to. But most people don't have to go through that process. But in order to get the best result, you do need attorneys that are prepared and skilled and successful at trial practice. So a number of years ago, actually 2001, wow, I became board certified as a civil trial lawyer. And you have to take an extra test, and you have to demonstrate certain experience requirements and have references and that sort of thing. And it's renewed every 5 years. And a very small percentage of attorneys actually acquire that particular certification.
And I think it's
one
only
or two,
like 3%, isn't
like
there?
that.
Maybe even 2%.
Yeah, something. And we've got like 100,000 plus lawyers in Florida. So not too many attorneys end up developing the expertise and getting it, and essentially getting the bar's recognition that you're an expert in that area. So I'm actually pretty proud to have that certification and the experience it represents in being able to help people go to trial. And we've certainly had quite a number of jury trials over the years, and we're very, very happy to do that. In fact, that's what I love to do, but also to have the experience so that the insurance company takes our demands seriously, and they know that we will go to trial if we're not able to get a successful result satisfactorily in a settlement.
Yeah, and even though there's only 2 or 3% of the attorneys that are board certified in civil practice, we have two. We have you and Brian Caulfield as well. They're both board certified civil trial attorneys. Yeah. And another area of our practice is outside of the state courtroom, so to speak, and we do Social Security disability, and we do a lot of Social Security disability. Yes. Can you tell our listeners just a little bit about that part of our practice?
Yes, I think it's certainly been a very interesting thing for me to learn about and develop over the years. I would say I probably got involved with Social Security close to 20 years ago now, probably, and it is an area that unless you have had some reason to apply for Social Security disability, the average person probably has no idea about it. But it's supposed to be a simple process that an individual could handle on their own. But having been a lawyer for many, many years, I can tell you there's so many nicks and crannies and rules that relate to it that it's very, very difficult and complicated. So most people will find that they probably would benefit having an attorney represent them. And so we handle cases in which a person is no longer able to work. And in Social Security terms, it means a pretty much total disability. I mean, if you are unable currently to work pretty much full time and earn more than $1,470 gross per month, which isn't very much, if you're above that at all, then you would not qualify for Social Security. But below that amount, or unable to work at all due to medical conditions that limit your capabilities, then it's very reasonable to look into whether you could be approved for Social Security disability. And that's basically, it's based on your earnings record, what you've paid into the Social Security system over the years, which if you're working in most settings, you will have paid into Social Security. Sometimes if people work for themselves, they should be paying in, but sometimes it's a little bit more complicated there. But basically, if you are disabled under the Social Security rules, which mean that you are unable to work, as I just explained a moment ago, and that condition lasts at least 1 year, then you should be entitled to recover payments under your Social Security retirement system, but it would be disability. You'd essentially get the retirement early related to the medical disability that you have.
And we have heard clients say, well, gosh, I feel guilty applying for Social Security disability. And we have to remind them, this is really your money. Exactly. You put into the system for in the event that this happens. It's insurance to prevent, to compensate you if you do get hurt and can't work any longer.
Yes, and one of the other things I've seen quite a bit is that people will, particularly in that regard, where they feel guilty, they've worked hard all their life and they can't imagine tapping into the system. Sometimes people, the rules are so detailed that a lot of times, especially when you are 50 or older, people will not understand how the rules work, because you can have situations where perhaps you can't do your past work. And I'll give an example of, say, you've worked in something where you had to have some physical capacity, not a sit-down job type thing, and you can't do that due to physical limitations. But you think, well, maybe I could go do some other simpler thing. Well, the rules are different once you're over 50. And so, without getting into the weeds, and basically, it's a situation where particularly people that are age 50 and above and are thinking about stopping work because of their medical condition, or even taking early Social Security at age 62, they should consult an attorney so they understand how the system works and how best to posture themselves in a way that they may be approved to get those benefits that they paid into the system for early.
Exactly. Well, if you have questions regarding Social Security, give us a call at 727-441-3000, just like Amy did. Amy, thank you for holding. How can we help you?
Hi, yes, just a question. I'm working right now, but it's really hard to work 40 hours full time. Am I able to apply for Social Security disability?
Amy, that's a very good question. We hear that a lot. We hear, hey, I'm working, but not as much as I should or could be working. Is Social Security disability an avenue that they can take? And that's a good question. Lori, how would you answer that for Amy?
That really kind of fits right in along the lines of what I was referring to a moment ago, because I would say I do an awful lot of just counseling with people who are thinking, you know what, I don't know how much longer I can continue to push myself to do my work. So in the situation that Amy is describing, it's a little unclear. So the fact that because basically you're going to have to be reduced to very, very part-time, which typically is likely going to be less than 20 hours a week. And whatever it is, you cannot earn more than $1,470 gross.
Right.
Okay, so
that's about $250 a week. Yeah.
He's the math guy. And we can attribute that maybe to your sister.
That's right. Certainly not my son.
But so what I will often suggest to people, if they're wondering about this is when you call, and you feel free to call our office, and we will, as a courtesy, and this is not something a person you're going to have to pay an attorney fee for or anything, just if you have a question, we will review your situation with you to give you some guidance on that. So because what can happen, what I've seen happen often is people will reduce to pretty much part-time, but if you're above that, let's just call it $1,400 to make it round. If you're above that amount, you can't qualify. And sometimes what people do is literally knock themselves out to keep pushing. And maybe they make $1,500, $1,600. It's too much. And it's really, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot in that scenario. Now, if you can make significantly more, great, because obviously it's better to be able to live your life and work. I mean, most people would certainly prefer to do that. But if you're in a situation where you're just starting to have more and more difficulties, it's a good idea to get some input, because, as I say, it's quite complicated.
Right. And you have to be unable to work at substantial gainful activity or $1,400 a month for a year.
Right.
So if you're pushing yourself and you're working, you have to be out for a year before you can actually qualify. A
lot of times people will have, really something awful happen, maybe a stroke or something like this, which is very debilitating. But it won't initially be clear how long lasting the limitations will be. And of course, obviously you hope that you'll be able to recover more rapidly. But for Social Security purposes, it has to be medically documented that the person is going to have those significant limitations for a year.
Right. Amy, was that helpful for you?
Yes, thank you guys so much.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for calling. We are happy to address any questions that you or any of our listeners have. It does look like we have another call. It's like Orlando is on the line as well. Thank you for listening. How can we help you?
Hi, thank you. So I do have a question. My spouse is on long-term disability. Now they are telling us that he has to file for Social Security disability or they will stop paying. Is that true?
That's a good question. We see that a lot too. We have people that are on short-term disability for a period of time because of a mental or a physical disability. And then they shift over to long-term disability. And then long-term disabilities tells them that they have to apply for Social Security disability. In fact, most times they even give them a firm that they need to call in order to apply for Social Security disability. Lori, can you address that?
Sure. So, of course, it's great to have a long-term disability plan as a part of your employee benefits. So that's a great thing. But almost all the policies will include a provision that will require the application for Social Security disability. And the reason they do that is because the plans will have a set-off so that once you get approved for Social Security disability, chances are you'll have to reimburse them for at least some portion, depending on what the plan language says, for what you have received from the disability insurer. So it's something. Now, they do almost always suggest someone. I think most times you can select your own counsel if you choose to.
And I think it's important.
I think so too.
I always hear that, hey, my long-term disability carrier wanted me to go to this group of even non-attorneys to handle my Social Security disability claim. I always have a little problem with that because long-term disability is looking out for their own best interest. Their goal is to reduce what they have to pay the disabled person.
Yeah, but also I'd say what I think we're seeing over and over again is that the firms, the outfits that they recommend, maybe they have some sort of relationship. I'm not really sure, but they're typically I don't want to say a mill exactly, but high volume practices. One of the things that we pride ourselves on is that you get individual attention, that you got somebody you can talk to, an attorney. I mean, you can have a non-attorney representative, and I'm sure there are probably some that are fine, but obviously we're attorneys, and
you have to present yourself in front of a judge,
right? So that's kind of
it's
second
always
nature.
Better to have an attorney who does go in front of the judge,
right?
There's nothing necessarily wrong with a non-attorney representative, but we attorneys, we know the laws, we know the procedures and the rules and how to present a case in front of the judge. And so I always think it's better.
And I think the other aspect of that is I think, Social Security sets the fee structure. So it really, you might as well get the experience and background of an attorney.
So Orlando, was that helpful for you?
Very much. Now I can see it a little more clear. So thank you very much.
Thank you for listening, and thank you for calling in with that question. It's a question that a lot of people think of, and hopefully they were listening and they had their question answered without even having to ask it. And but that does free up a line. Please give Lori Robinson or myself, Matthew Noyes, a call. We're here until 6:00. We're here to talk about Social Security disability, car accidents, car insurance, slip and falls, or any personal injury matters as well. So call us at 727-441-3000. But before we get back into the calls, Lori, rumor has it that you had a new addition to your family.
Yes.
Why don't you tell our listeners about that?
Yeah. So I love all animals, all dogs in particular, but I'm kind of very fond, as you know, of Cocker Spaniels. And so I have an older Cocker Spaniel named Dixie D, and it just became time to add to our family of fur babies, I guess you could say. Yeah. And so
Dixie D's not a fur baby anymore.
No,
8 years old.
No,
right?
actually, she's 11 now.
Oh,
if you can
11,
believe that,
okay.
But she's a young 11. Yeah. And then, but I decided recently, and I was able to pick up a beautiful little black male Cocker Spaniel. His name is Ricky Jr. He's going to go, his short nickname is RJ. So little RJ.
Great idea.
Yes, a certain individual contributed that idea. He's sitting right next to me. It's very cute. And he is just a little dog. Of course, he's 4 months old, so he's quite active, but a lot of fun, And
he
really,
came home on Sunday.
Yes, I picked him up in DeLand.
So I was a little worried about asking Lori to help me with the radio show today because I thought maybe the house would be in disarray with a puppy around.
But the puppies are all very happy because I came into the office Monday morning, and there on my desk was this beautiful, almost like a cornucopia, this little basket of all these treats, toys and all of that stuff from Matt, which was so sweet because I know you're not exactly a person that goes into a pet store.
I did feel like a fish out of water, that's for sure.
And yes, that noise you hear in the background is Matt patting himself on the back.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I did feel like a fish. I went with my son. I said, Jake, what are we supposed to get?
Well, the little purple toy RJ just loves, and then the yellow hoop, Dixie D likes it.
Oh, the purple toy is a squeaky one.
Yes, it is.
I blame Jacob for picking that one out for you. All right.
It is squeaky.
But Ricky, his name is important because
Ricky is a kind of a little bit of a legacy. So many years ago, I had another Cocker Spaniel who was actually named Ricky, and he was a rescue. He was about 5 years old when my mother and she was with us at that time. And oh, how she loved Ricky. And he was a very, very sweet dog. So lost him in 2014. He was about 15 probably. So there's a little bit of a legacy there and a connection to my mother. It just, when I thought about, well, what should I name him? I just kind of felt her whispering in my ear and maybe a little touch from heaven, Ricky Jr. And he looks like a little Ricky Jr. And then I do love the little nickname of RJ. It really suits him. So it kind of it's a little bond in our family, which warms the heart.
That's cool. Now I would be remiss as a personal injury attorney, not to talk about liability as a dog owner.
Yes.
In fact, I had a very nice prior client, and I consider a friend, text me over the weekend and said that his grandchild and daughter-in-law, I want to say, were attacked by a dog up in Tallahassee.
Oh, my goodness.
And so he needed some legal advice of what to do. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about the responsibility or the liability that a dog owner has in Florida? Because it is different in every state.
Yes. And so Florida really has what is called strict liability, which means that if your dog bites somebody, you are responsible. So now I have the sweetest dogs ever, so, I'm not too worried. But the truth of the matter is, under the wrong circumstances, any dog can act out, so. And
just ask President Biden.
That's right. I mean, his dog bit a Secret Service agent.
Yeah, that's not somebody you want to bite, I don't think.
No, I don't think so. So it's the kind of thing where it is something to be, for the protection of your animal, you need to be very aware and keep the dogs under control, and don't put them in situations like with young children if they're not experienced with young children or familiar, other things that you would think about. You don't want to expose anyone to harm, because if the dog bites somebody, then there is strict liability. Now, there are other situations, where, of course, if you're negligent, there can be other problems that you might have. But the thing people don't necessarily realize, even if your dog has never bit anybody else before, under Florida law, if the dog bites somebody, you're responsible as the owner.
What about the signs that say beware dogs? Does that give them blanket immunity?
No, although, there can,
a lot of people think that.
Yeah,
though.
there can be circumstances. It might raise some defenses if somebody goes into a place where they, were told that there was a dog to be concerned about or whatever. Yeah, but it's not that it's inadvisable to do that. I mean, it still may, because what you really want to do is evaluate your own situation. And I would say people, particularly the different breed types, that every animal is a little different. Be very realistic about your puppy and your dog.
My mother-in-law had a Chihuahua, and I was more fearful of that dog than any other dog, quite honestly. That thing was nipping all the time.
Yes, the little ones can be quite nippy, actually. Yeah.
But another issue that comes into play when we're talking about injuries from dogs is the homeowner's insurance policy. Yes. If you get bit by if you get bit by a dog, there is a claim you can make.
Right.
And typically it's a claim against the homeowner's insurance policy.
Yes.
But there's problems with that.
Right. Yeah.
And what are those problems, Lori?
And so, and I want to just say as a sort of a side aspect to this, that for the most part, if there isn't homeowners insurance available, it's very difficult really to make a claim against an individual just in terms of collection. So the reality is you're looking to see if the homeowners insurance for the owner of the dog will have coverage for a dog bite. And many homeowners insurance policies do, but many do not. Many exclude dogs in general, and many, it will exclude certain breeds, sort of the ones that you would think, like the pit bulls and the others.
And sadly, I see more policies doing the exclusion than doing the inclusion.
Right. So it's and that's probably been a phenomena over quite a number of years. I was just looking the other day. It's just an article or something, and apparently there have been quite a number more claims over the years of dog bites. And I don't know whether, there's so many dogs now, and so I don't know what the reason for that would be. But insurance companies, of course, they don't like to pay out claims, and so it's not. So you have to look at your policy to just see what the situation is, to see whether you're covered, particularly if you have a dog that might be a little bit more easily agitated.
Right. And what's surprising, those homeowners policies have medical payment coverage on there. So if somebody gets hurt at your home and they have medical expenses, then they can bring a claim just to get their medical bills paid under the medical payment coverage without admitting fault or anything like that. But that's excluded even if it's a dog. If it's a dog bite, because if there's an exclusion on the homeowner's policy, that also excludes the medical payment coverage in that situation as well.
Which is unfortunate because, obviously in most situations, you'd hope that it's not a huge problem. But, sometimes it can be. Obviously, we've heard things in the news, et cetera. And we've had cases over the years where people did have children and others significant
injuries. Many times. Yeah. Well, it looks like it's a good time to take our first break. During the break, give us a call at 441-3000. Lori and myself are here to answer Social Security disability questions, personal injury questions, even dog bite questions, or just dog questions that don't have to do with injury. Lori can answer all those. So we'll be right back in just a few minutes.
This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
In 1955, the law firm now known as Perenich, Caulfield, Avril, and Noyes made a decision. Instead of taking whatever cases came through their doors, they decided to focus specifically on personal injury. 64 years later, the law firm is one of Clearwater's longest-running personal injury firms. Available 24 hours a day with offices in Clearwater and throughout Tampa Bay, they're ready to put decades of experience to work for you if you or a loved one has been injured in a car accident or injured due to someone's negligence or recklessness. If you feel overwhelmed, uncertain, or unsure about your next steps after being involved in an accident or after a loved one sustained serious injuries due to someone else's negligence, call Perenich, Caulfield, Avril, and Noyes at 727-796-8282 or online at usalaw.com. That's 727-796-8282 or online at usalaw.com. Non-attorney spokesman.
This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
We are back. This is Matthew Noyes, and I am here with Lori Robinson, and we are two attorneys from the personal injury law firm of Perenich, Caulfield, Avril, and Noyes. We have been serving the injured since 1955, and we're here to serve you on the radio every Tuesday from 5 until 6. This is a live legal call-in talk show. This is your opportunity to ask a lawyer a question. It can be regarding our areas of law, or it can be regarding any areas of law. Quite honestly, we're happy to tackle the question. Before we took the break, first let me say the telephone number again. It is 727-441-3000. Before we took the break, we were talking about dogs.
Yes.
Lori's new Ricky Jr.
One of my favorite topics.
And we kind of jokingly talked about President Biden's dog biting the Secret Service. Well, that happened within the course and scope of the Secret Service duties. And so he would not have a claim against President Biden if it was a Florida case, even though the dog would be responsible and the owner would be responsible. But what kind of claim, if this happened in Florida, what kind of claim would that person have?
So it would be a workers' compensation claim.
Yeah, and you're limited to workers' compensation. That's your exclusive remedy.
Right.
If you get hurt in Florida at work, and even if it was the result of the negligence of the employer, your exclusive remedy is workers' compensation. Doesn't seem fair, doesn't seem right. I always use the scenario back in my quite younger days, my pre-law days. One of my favorite jobs was being a waiter at Denny's restaurant on US 19 in Harn. And so I always give this scenario that myself as a waiter and a customer could be walking the same way and slip on a puddle that's caused by a leak in the restaurant.
Yeah.
If we have the same exact injury, if we broke our arm, had the same amount of time out of work, the same amount of pain and suffering, I would be limited to a workers' comp doctor and wages up for a certain amount of time. Whereas the person, the customer, who got injured the same exact way with the same amount of damages, who's able to seek compensation outside of workers' comp, would be entitled to the choice of their own doctor, 100% of their wages, pain and suffering, loss of enjoyment in life, and
Very
such like that.
different picture, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a shame in the stories that we hear from the workers' comp clients that we help.
And the wild thing is, I think the idea was, well, the workers' compensation system, it'll be so simple. You don't have to establish fault. It'll be, oriented towards the employee. But if it ever was, it hasn't been in my career like that. I mean, and I know so what you're dealing with, that is another very complicated system with very limited opportunities for the individual. And, it surprises people.
Yeah,
actually,
I think the first part of the statute says that the workers' comp law should be self-executing.
Right.
There's no way that's self-executing. No. In order to fight for a benefit, you have to file a petition for benefits. You have to do it online. No one tells you where to do it online. They don't give you the form to do it online. If you do it wrong, it gets booted out.
Right.
So it's crazy.
Yes. So it's in those situations. Now, there are situations where the insurance carrier and the employer, everything is really the insurance carrier, do handle things as they should be under the law, but it is limited, like you said.
Right.
But there are many, many more situations that we see all the time where the person isn't provided what they're entitled to, even under the law.
If the adjuster did their job, we'd be out of one.
That is true.
So, but because they don't, we stay quite busy.
There you go. Yeah.
And being busy, the phone line is a little busy. And so it's Maxwell's on the line. Maxwell, thank you for listening and thank you for calling in. How can we help you tonight?
Sure thing. Hi, Matt. Hi, Lori.
Hey.
I was curious about Social Security's $1,470 a month substantially gainful activity limit, and specifically how they came about that number, because I don't think $1,470 a month is enough to support yourself anywhere in this country, unless you live in maybe rural Arkansas. And on top of that, they expect you to get all this medical documentation that's very expensive. And how do they expect people making that low amount of money to also be getting the treatment they need to document that they're disabled?
That's a very good question, Maxwell. And that's something we have to address with our potential clients and our clients on a regular basis.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Lori, how do they come up with that number?
Yeah. I don't know precisely how Social Security establishes the
Bullseye
number.
in a dart.
Right. Yeah. And it increased a little bit every year. I mean, when I first started doing this quite a few years ago, it was $1,000 a month, but the thing that people don't realize, and this comes up all the time, is that Social Security is not they're not looking to make it easy for a person to qualify, because of the nature of their government funds, but we paid into that system. But it also isn't, even if you're approved, it's a big shock to people when they look at what their benefit amount is. And you can go online and go onto the Social Security website, and you can set up an account and find out what you would be entitled to. That's like the statement that we get in the mail, or we used to. But people will look at it and say there's a common amount. It just depends on what you earn. But let's say it's $1,500 or $1,800. Well, how am I going to live on that?
Right.
But it's not. Social Security itself was only intended to be kind of a supplement for people, and we've kind of moved so most people do think about it as a significant part of their retirement. But so to go back to Max's question, you're looking at a situation where it's a total disability system. It is very difficult, and obviously people that are not able to work or probably don't have insurance, and you can get medical care through the health department system and that sort of thing, but you got to be very persistent. It's very difficult, and yet it's a medically driven record. You have to get the medical care. So
that's the catch-22.
Yeah.
I think Maxwell's talking about.
Right.
Is I don't have money.
Right.
That's why I need Social Security disability. I can't work.
Right.
But because I can't work, I don't have the money to get the medical treatment that I need.
And so that we do hear that a lot, and it's again something that I encourage people to have a consult about, because there's no good answer to that.
No.
But it is possible. I mean, we do represent people that are in that situation, basically. So it is possible to get medical care. Unfortunately, the Social Security process itself takes a long time, which is another thing that's a big surprise for people, that they expect that they could be approved in a few months. That's almost never true. I mean, very rarely would that be the case. Normally it's a process that goes a year or more.
Yeah, we have to tell our clients, listen, you may have treated with the doctor in the last 6 months, but this is a multi-year process, and it's important that we have continued medical documentation of your ongoing disability.
That's right. You can't be approved just based on what you say. It has to be supported by ongoing medical documentation, and that's a big challenge for people. Many, many times we have to explain that you have to continue to see the doctor.
Yes. And Maxwell, I hope that was helpful to you, and that you did raise a very good question about how do I get that medical treatment if I can't even afford to live on what I'm earning?
Right.
So I hope that was helpful for you.
It was. Thank you very much, Matt and Lori.
Thank you for listening.
For the call. Yeah.
And that's free up a line. We have about 15 or so minutes still available. Our telephone number is 727-441-3000. Lori Robinson and myself, Matt Noyes, are proud attorneys of Perenich, Caulfield, Avril, and Noyes, the personal injury law firm right here in Clearwater, but we have offices throughout Tampa Bay. And we've been serving the injured since 1955. Our website is usalaw.com, but we also have voiceoftheinjured.com. We thought it would be important to be called Voice of the Injured because we are, in essence, a voice.
Right.
People have questions. Some people don't even know what questions they have. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know.
Oh, I think, and particularly if you haven't been through an automobile accident scenario.
Right.
We have a young man and this kind of surprised me, but he honestly didn't even know how to follow up on his property damage. He'd never been in an accident. He was kind of younger, was completely unaware of any of that. And of course, a lot of times that's the thing a person will focus on first. And yet you actually do have some injuries going on that need attention. You don't know where to go to the doctor. I mean, it's really something that unless you've gone through it, you don't have much of an idea typically.
And then there's personal injury protection coverage if you're not in your car but you get hurt. Whose PIP or personal injury protection coverage covers your medical bills.
Mm-hmm.
There's just so many things that you don't even know what to ask. And so that's why it's important that if you are involved in a car accident, it's important to get treatment first, because the law says you need to treat within 14 days.
Right.
Otherwise, all those premiums you paid for your personal injury protection coverage are useless because you can't use your PIP coverage. So it's important to see a doctor within 14 days.
That sounds like a booby trap.
Yeah, it sure does.
It's like, oh,
and then it's also it's good to talk to an attorney to talk about the property damage, talk about whose PIP is supposed to be paid. There are situations in our practice where we talk to somebody who's involved in a crash, and they're hurt, but fortunately they get better within a few months of treatment. That's ideal. The case, there is no case in terms of a personal injury claim, but it's much better to get better than to get compensation for injuries.
Absolutely. And again, that's another example of how complicated the thing is, because you could recover your economic losses, which maybe some wage loss and some, typically there wouldn't be much of a claim, but in the genius of our system, the part that's the hardest to deal with, usually the pain and suffering and just what you go through, unfortunately, that's not recoverable if you do recover. But I think most people would say, I think I'll take recovery.
Exactly right.
In that scenario.
That's right. I mean, we represented a husband and wife, wonderful people. Husband needed to have surgery, and the wife had significant back problem. And we made a significant recovery, but they told us, listen, you can have all this money back if you get us our health back.
Right.
And I think that's the mentality most clients have. Unfortunately, that's not the image that the insurance companies try to portray to the public. They think everybody's out for a buck. And in our practice, we see that that's not really the case.
No, it's not at all, really. I think generally speaking, and you just look at like the 14-day thing. I think because I know how I am, as a lawyer, I would know better. But you're hoping it's not going to be a problem.
Right.
A lot of people would not necessarily run right into the doctor if but now the insurance company plays upon that by having established the 14-day period.
Right. And I mean, we all live busy lives.
Right.
All of a sudden, okay, we have a crash. Your life's thrown up in turmoil, and you have to worry about your car. You got to worry about getting to work if your car is not drivable. And then you also have to worry about a doctor. And if you don't take care of that, all of a sudden you lose those benefits.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Right. Now, so if you're in immediate excruciating pain, you're probably going to take care of it. But there are many injuries that don't go away, that start out more gradually and are significant. They may not be the worst, but they're still significant. So,
And many times after a crash, the adrenaline's flowing and you don't even feel the injury until later. So if you have questions regarding, as you can tell, we're a bit passionate about fighting for those that are injured in car accidents, because we see way too many people get stuck with listening to insurance companies giving them guidance instead of listening to attorneys that are really looking out for them instead. So if you have questions, give us a call at 441-3000. I did want to loop back to the Social Security disability, because we keep talking about Social Security disability and physical disability and such like that. But many of our Social Security disability claims may not have a physical disability, but it has a mental disability. Yes,
and that actually, I'm working on one now that's just very compelling case of a disabled vet, and of course the terrible things people can be exposed to that have served our country. It just breaks your heart. But there are, you can have situations where, due to depression or anxiety or various other psychiatric conditions, you're just not able to, even with medication, to function in an ongoing way to work at the level that Social Security calls the substantial gainful level, which, as when Max called a moment ago, we see it's a very low level, but the person cannot really do that. And so those cases can be challenging because you have to, again, it's the documentation. But if you're getting ongoing psychiatric care with a doctor that knows you, then that is something that's absolutely a very legitimate basis
Sure.
to be awarded Social Security disability.
I mean, many times people have anxiety or depression that prevents them from working 5 days a week, and then they're unable to even hold down a job because of that.
Right.
No employer is going to hire somebody who has to be out 3 or 4 times a month because of depression.
And that one of the things, any of the mental health issues can be somewhat more subjective in their nature, but what Social Security will recognize, certainly once you get to the hearing level, is exactly what you're saying. They have vocational experts that are a part of the hearing process, and they will all concede that if a person would miss on a regular basis 2 days a month, and some of them will even say, honestly, if it's 1 day every single month, it's not consistent with being able to maintain competitive employment. So that's a factor that can be brought out before a judge, and with good documentation by a treating psychiatrist, you can absolutely be awarded benefits.
So let's talk about that documentation, because we've had clients say, my psychiatrist or my doctor says that I'm disabled. He has it in his notes. I cannot work. I'm disabled. Is that good enough for the Social Security?
Unfortunately not. What happens is that Social Security they have their own criteria, their own standards, their own rules for what they consider meets the Social Security disability standard. And most doctors, frankly, unless they've been involved with Social Security, they're not going to really know what that is. So they may feel that the person can't really work, but they don't know how Social Security looks at it. So what we end up needing over the years, we've developed questionnaires to provide for the doctors to answer the questions Social Security cares about. But really what it boils down to is Social Security is looking at things like what we just talked about a moment ago. Is this person, due to their mental symptoms, going to be unable to maintain a customary attendance requirement for work? Is this person going to have difficulty maintaining concentration and persistence so that they can just stay focused on a task? And they'll recognize in Social Security hearings that if a person would be what they call off task, as little as I would say, like 15% of a day, doesn't seem like that much.
Right.
Really, we all daydream, right? But honestly, if you are routinely off, 10% even. Some of them will agree with that. In the course of a day, if you look at that, what that's really saying is a person that isn't actually focusing. And if the psychiatrist can confirm that is the case, that's what we call a functional limitation the Social Security will look at. And then a judge at a hearing gets a chance to see the person. And of course, we prepare the person in a memo and that sort of thing, an argument. And then in those situations, you can be successful with good documentation. But it's unfortunate because a lot of times a doctor is trying to help. But what helps really is not saying that it's you think the person can't work, but spelling out what the actual reasons are, right?
What prevents them from working?
That's right. And then Social Security will apply those reasons to their criteria.
And I see a lot of times people focus on one condition to qualify for Social Security disability, when in reality, it's not just one condition that they're looking at.
Right.
Social Security wants to know all the conditions.
Those conditions that really have some significant impact, but even if one has a lesser impact in combination with other conditions, you can see where that's going to reduce the available work that a person could do. Now, unfortunately, other people will often think, well, I can't get a job. That's not what Social Security looks at. They have a kind of a theoretical way of looking at it, and they have what they call the Dictionary of Occupational Titles, which is this book that hasn't been updated since 1991. But they have theoretical jobs. And so what they're looking at, could you perform a job that is in the economy, basically, in some significant numbers? So it's a little tricky there.
In the economy back in 1991, when that book was drafted.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. We don't really even have very many toll booth operators anymore.
That's true. You could be a sun passer.
Yeah. Right.
No. But that's what is important. And I think 50, the age 50 is significant in Social Security.
It's a very significant number. It's people don't like to get a little bit older, but in terms of Social Security, crossing the threshold at age 50 is very important, because the rules then are more lenient, if you want to put it that way, and it's basically recognizing the
more realistic, actually.
Yeah, I would say realistic is a better way of putting it, because really it's looking at how easy it would be to even adapt to a different type of work if you're unable to do the work you've done, in basically your working life. So there are a number of charts and things that make it a little bit easier to qualify once you are over the threshold of age 50.
Isn't there a limited period of time that they look at from your past history, your past relevant work?
Yeah, they will look at the last 15 years of your work history at work that was at that substantial gainful level, which is each year it's a little different. Like last year, it was $1,350 a month. So any work that you were earning over that would be in that category of past relevant work, and they take a look at that, and then they're going to look at your physical and mental issues and determine whether you could do any of that past work as it's generally performed in the economy or as you have performed it yourself.
And that's instead of looking at that dictionary of occupational titles where there's all kinds of different jobs.
Yeah, that comes later. That after they exclude the past work. So if they are able to determine you can't do your past work, then they look at what they call the residual functional capacity. What are you still physically and mentally able to do? And at that point, depending on what that is, they consult that book from 1991 to see what occupations might be available for you given a particular physical capacity.
Yeah, it's a battle. I mean,
it is a battle.
People think that you can just file for Social Security disability and then get approved. But there's a whole step process, not even going over the 5-step process.
Right.
But you have to file the application. You got to wait. You get denied.
Right.
You file a request for reconsideration. And then what do you happen if that gets denied? What happens?
And they
after
usually
that?
do. So because it's just the same type of review, just a different set of eyes, but the same kind of eyes. So, and that process can take 6-8 months, a year, or longer even. But
and it's not a judge looking at that at that stage.
Just an employee at Social Security who kind of reviews things. So once you're denied twice, as we say, then the next step is to request a hearing before an administrative law judge. And that is where we would expect to be successful. There's actually scheduling those pretty efficiently now once you get to that point.
Just
6-8 months or a year.
Yeah.
But even so, that's on top of that earlier part. So you can see where, unfortunately, in most cases, it's a pretty lengthy process.
Right. Well, I hope that was helpful for you all. Thank you for listening. We are wrapping it up. But if you have questions regarding Social Security disability or personal injury, our law firm is here to help you. Our telephone number at the law firm is 796-8282, or you can find us on usalaw.com or voiceoftheinjured.com. But we are here to help you, whether it's personal injury, workers' compensation, Social Security disability. But Lori, thank you very much for skipping out on Ricky Jr. and Dixie D for an hour. Hopefully they didn't tear apart the house too much.
Hopefully not.
We will be back here next week. I think Jacqueline Bryant will be hosting next week, and it'll be a surprise of who her guest will be. But in the meantime, thank you for listening. This is Matthew Noyes with the law firm of Perenich, Caulfield, Avril, and Noyes. We appreciate you listening. We appreciate you being involved. Drive safely and watch out for those who don't. Good night.
Good night, everybody.